I think Greg Ruth's style is extremely fresh. The general public might take for granted, but a fellow artist would know and understand how very difficult what he does is and how masterful he is at using the minimal amount of line and texture to create an incredibly realistic and energetic looking picture.
Greg works in what I would call a realistic style for the most part, but it's touched by magic. There's a sense of mystery and a sense of history, a sense of place that is very strong.
Hey Dad, can you just draw this? And I'll come up with some weird, crazy idea. And then he'll draw that, and he's quite good at it.
Greg is the artist I always wanted to be growing up. Greg is really, really, really fine.
He's one of the most passionate artists I've worked with in terms of the writing, in terms of the storytelling, and in terms of the effort that he puts into his artwork. He just wanted so much to bring this world to life, and nothing was going to stop him. You can see the love that he put into every panel, into every painting that he did, and that I think is really pretty astonishing.
My name is Greg Ruth. I write and draw books, children's picture books, book covers, short story stuff, but really my love is in comics, for sure. I grew up down in Texas, and I just found myself going into my room and drawing or making stuff. Mostly stuff that was around stories, I think. It was kind of a retreat, a place to go, so I always did it. I think my mother spotted that early on and got me into, art lessons and local art school kind of stuff for a long time. So that was always kind of a part of my life. I guess in that notion that you pay attention to the thing you do when no one's looking as the thing that you should be doing. I think that was the thing I was always doing. And then, went into performing at Visual Arts High School, and then that led to Pratt's. I met Jen Smith. She was one of the first people I met at Pratt, actually. We were just really good, close friends for a very long time. I think things just kind of grew from there. I feel like I've known Jen forever at this point. I think originally she went in for design and moved over into photography. And from there, started working for jewelers and then created this photographic jewelry work that she does now that's so great to see. We were in Brooklyn for a long time, and I had started working on Freaks of the Heartland down there. We were living in a really small apartment, and we had Emmett, our oldest child, had just been born. It was just too small, too close. It was kind of driving us insane. It was really expensive too. It's a hard city, I think, to be in as an artist. I think it's a very hard city to be in as an artist with kids. And we just realized we need to get out, and so we came here, and there's something about the hill towns in Ashfield now where we live. There is an arts here that's interesting. There's an active community happening right outside the door. We bought this house. It was the town doctor's house, and this whole building that we're in was the apothecary back in the day. We moved to Ashfield because we needed to get some more urban back to us, which is really a testament to how out here in the woods we are when Ashfield is the urban solution. It was better for us. We both work at home. We're both kind of self-isolating in a lot of ways, and so being in a place that's more public, on a main street across some Elmers and, in town, and being able to see people and kind of bump into people as you're walking around was really something we missed, I think, from our city days. And I think Ashfield kind of gave that back to us to a certain degree.
The Lost Boy is the story of this young guy, Nate, who moves with his family to a small town, and he's not very happy about it because he didn't want to move and he didn't want to leave his friends. He picks out a room in his new house. And under the floorboards of his room, he finds a reel-to-reel tape recorder. He immediately gets sucked into this mystery about what happened to this lost boy who disappeared many, many years ago in this town. And it turns out that the recordings are from this lost boy. He and this neighbor of his, Tabitha, start working together to figure out the mystery of the lost boy.
My name is Emmett Lee Ruth, and I'm in 6th grade. I think The Lost Boy is about how the Force has corrupted this boy into this monster who is, it's really hard to explain because it's quite weird. You have to have a weird mind like my dad's to be able to completely understand that, I think.
My name is Jane Yolen, and I am a writer. I call myself a storyteller, but actually I write my stories down. For me, the dry point black and white work that he's done in graphic novels is just amazing. There's a life in the black and white that is greater in some ways than the life in the color picture books. And I'm not sure I quite understand it, but they are literally stunning.
I hadn't really read comics as a kid. The direct market hadn't existed back then, and you can never get them in sequence. So they always started in the middle of something and they ended in some cliffhanger that was never resolved. So as a kid, I just never really took to it. A friend of mine that I grew up with in the neighborhood, Styles White, who's now a screenwriter with his wife out in Los Angeles, handed me Frank Miller's Dark Knight and I think Watchmen. And this is back in '87. And I resisted, I thought, I don't read comics, I don't care about that stuff. It was just a complete slap in the face, and I just loved it. I must have devoured those things in one sitting, and I couldn't stop. And I think I was not the same person when I came out the other side of it. It felt perfect to me.
My name is Ruth Sanderson, and I'm a children's book author and illustrator. What also impresses me about Greg Ruth is how amazing a designer he is. The way he lays out his panels on the page, his use of negative space. I'm reminded of Alfred Hitchcock. So many of his pictures have that very, very dramatic lighting.
My full name is Rebecca Levier Gay, and I am a professional artist. We did meet in Brooklyn, but we have officially got to know each other much better since Jane Yolen, who is a dear friend of mine who I've worked with on several books, brought him to a local artists meeting and illustrators and artists in the area.
Greg and I just got along like a house on fire. We had lots to talk about, and I asked him if he was interested in possibly coming to look at and possibly join the Western Massachusetts Illustrators Guild, WMIG we call it, which I helped start 35 years ago.
I remember my jaw practically dropping to the floor because his work was just so amazing and incredible. And it's hard to impress me, and Greg Ruth impresses me. And it's not just because we share the same name.
When I went to Pratt and was over back in the painting department, it wasn't really shied on. I think a lot of the staff were post-abstract expressionists. It was very high-end. You were supposed to go into gallery stuff. I mean, you couldn't show comics in class. No one would take it seriously. They didn't even want to see it. So I kind of did it in my dorm room secretly while I was doing these big black Pratty-like paintings, tar and charcoal that everybody else was doing.
We're very picky. We don't just let people in just because they say they're illustrators. But Greg showed up with a couple of his picture books and some, I think, beginning ideas for his graphic novel.
The nature of the work is so distinctive. I know of very, very few artists who can create such palpable moods and such kind of deep emotional connection within black and white imagery. He does it so effortlessly.
We were blown away by what he had done. I mean, there was no question that we wanted him as a member of the group. And so he became a member of the Western Massachusetts Illustrators Guild, which meant I got to see him quite a bit.
The world has depth and space and all with the very, very simple tools of beautiful line and value.
And I was fortunate to be at a a children's book event with Greg at the Eric Carle Museum, where he actually was selling some of the original pictures from The Lost Boy, and this particular illustration of the boy in the woods was one of my very favorites in the book.
I'm not alone in feeling this way, because in the illustrators group, when he brought in various of the pictures that were ongoing in the graphic novel, when he brought in the final book, everybody was actually grabbing them up and shelling out money, which illustrators never do, for somebody else's book.
I was fortunate to be able to pick up the original illustration for my own private collection of originals. And I don't buy many originals, but Greg has become one of my very favorite illustrators.
I've gone into his studios once in a while and seen him. He's just really crouched over, and yeah. I think he uses Sumi ink with just a brush. He doesn't really do pencil much, I don't think. He usually just draws with a brush.
I don't know what it is. I don't know what it's called. It's all in Japanese. I just see it. I know what it is. It's it's basically a classic Sumi ink that has a kind of a shellac in it. It just is a very thick, very, very deep, rich ink. I just absolutely adore it. While I was doing Sudden Gravity, which I had done in ballpoint pen, which is insane thing to do, and I will never draw like that again. At one point when I was just out of my mind, going crazy, doing all these panels in ballpoint pen, there was this dream sequence, and I thought, oh, this will be a great opportunity to break out of this and try something else. And I got a little brush out, and I got some ink, and I ended up doing these kind of Sumi brush drawings, and I just love them. Even though that sequence in the book was only 3 pages long, I think, it just transformed the way I wanted to do books.
My name is Charles Kochman. I'm the editorial director at Abrams Comic Arts, which is the graphic novel division of Abrams, the art book publisher. I like anybody who's really an artist. I mean, I think his work is distinctive from everybody else's. You could look at it and tell right away that it's Greg Ruth as opposed to somebody else, and I think that's partly because of his brushstrokes, his line work, his storytelling, his attention to detail in all the books that he's done.
One of the things that I really like about how he's talked about his process that I really respond to as an artist myself, and I feel it's incredibly brave of him to actually do published work this way, is that he will just go after the finished piece right away, and if the art director wants something different, he'll just do another piece.
He doesn't necessarily do sketches. I'm extremely envious of that technique. I could never do it myself. I really need to plan, and this is what's so interesting and exciting about this field of illustration, is that you can do your own thing. You can create how you want to create and in the way you want to create.
There was a guy named Keith Levinson that I met at a crafts fair. My wife, Jen, was doing a lot of craft shows at the time, and I would wander around, and nestled in amidst a lot of the kind of Harlequin masks and stuff that they had at these things was this guy who was making these brushes. He would, get bamboo or horn, and he would trap animals and take their hair. It was really frontiersman kind of stuff. But they were the most extraordinary brushes around, and he would have boxes and boxes of them, and I would rifle through them for almost an hour and find like 2 or 3 that they felt like they'd always been in my hand. And I've used them ever since, and I've used this brush for maybe 15 years. With this and the Sumi ink, it's just an absolutely wonderful kind of opaque line. You can get very detailed, you can get very fat. It's kind of an all-in-one tool, and I pretty much do everything, I think, with these brushes.
I've watched him draw, and what I admire about that in particular is that he doesn't seem to obsess over what he's about to do. He just sort of, goes in the moment and just does it. I think that's a rare treat to see somebody who's so gifted get transported into their own work that they're drawing. I marvel at how he's able to translate, his sort of feelings and his the stories that he's telling into pen and ink and brush and ink onto the page.
The way that he lays his brushstrokes down, it's almost free form, but at the same time very realistic. It's masterful. And in a way, his style is almost a sketch style with a brush, and that's his finished style. So it works perfectly.
It takes an enormous amount of training and visual memory and confidence to just go after the mark. I've really admired his moxie to hold true to what he wants to do and just do the piece. If they don't like it, they'll do another one. But it doesn't get involved with messing up that sort of special moment that the work has when you go after, the immediacy of a finish right away and all of the emotional impact that moment can have.
The act of working with it is such a mess, and it gets everywhere, but it always renders surprises that I could never have predicted. And I'm always happily surprised by. And sometimes there are real screw-ups, most of the time there are. But you just throw those drawings over your shoulder and do another one. It's really great that way, and it really cuts against my tendency to get too kind of tight.
Hi, I'm David Saylor, and I am creative director for the Graphics List, which is the graphic novel imprint at Scholastic. I first met Greg through a wonderful guy, his agent, Alan Spiegel. At the time, I was looking for an artist who could work on a Goosebumps story called The Scarecrow at Midnight. I was kind of blown away by Greg's work, which was amazing and very, very creepy. He was also doing Freaks of the Heartland at the time, which was really great. After he finished The Scarecrow at Midnight, we signed him up for The Lost Boy, which was going to be the first of a series of books called The Woodland Chronicles. Alan gave me this incredible presentation, and it's basically the first, I guess, 30-some pages of the book. And it's just, it blew me away because it was so beautiful and so professional.
I had this idea of finding a reel-to-reel recorder in the woods. I have a reel-to-reel recorder, and I thought I would get a little boy to read a script and kind of create this kind of false mystery, this kind of found footage kind of thing. This is back, maybe 1999, 1998. I think I started thinking about it in these terms back then.
Once we signed up The Lost Boy, it took a while before it was actually ready to sort of go, and it took a long time. There was a long gestation period for it, and I think partly it was because Greg was working on his first graphic novel, and he had so many ideas. I mean, and this world was sort of fully formed, I think, in his head.
It took a while to find. It was a very long slog, I think, for all of us. It's really to Scholastic's credit, and especially to David Saylor's credit, for just, it could have very easily, it was orphaned so many times. It could, by all rights, have lied fallow and died out someplace and never gotten executed.
With some writers, they need to sort of flesh things out to fill something in, but with Greg, it was really a matter of like paring it down because there was so much incredible stuff to work with.
I don't think it would have been as good as I think it came together as had it been anywhere else. I think that it was such a collaborative effort in terms of creating it. He brought in my last editor and final editor, and the most perfect one for this project, Adam Rao.
The two of them just got along great, and so I think Adam really helped Greg sort of shape the story and figure out how it would be, and they could bounce ideas off each other.
We're on so many opposite sides. We're both real film enthusiasts and story nerds, and I think we both love them so much, but we have very differing ideas about what works, and I think that kind of interaction was perfect for that, because I would be able to present an idea, he would get it, he would understand it immediately.
So you start feeling really like you're encompassed in this world, and even in black and white, it feels like an incredibly rich, mysterious, beautiful world. You can recognize the faces and the characters that he's drawing and that he's painting.
For me, their character comes out in how they interact with their world or with each other. So when one character is interacting with the other one, or they're having an argument, I think who they become or who they're supposed to be really starts to emerge from that. It's more of a process of finding the characters that are there out there someplace rather than inventing them, I think. And once that starts to happen, I think they start to take on a real life of their own, and they start writing their own dialogue in a lot of ways. And certainly with Lost Boy was tremendous, where it would literally, I would be working on a scene, and in my head, one of the characters would say, no, this doesn't work. I would never talk like this, or I would never say this, or I wouldn't have this problem with this. I would do this. And it suddenly changes the course of the story by how the characters respond to the events of the story. And that's when I feel like it's really fun, because it starts to write itself. You become I think as an artist, I think that's that moment where you become kind of a cipher rather than, somebody who's mechanically constructing it every step of the way. I don't think I could work like that. I need to see them in order to kind of feel out who they are in a lot of ways. If I was having trouble with them, I would actually make them or find them someplace, or I would find some old toy buried in the woods that I thought, oh, this would be a great character for the Lost Boy. And immediately it would start to feel like this is a cantankerous, weird toy robot who has, relationship issues or something absurd. One of the main characters, Tom Button, in order to find him, and part of the process of that was, going on eBay or going to tag sales and finding old doll parts and trying to make them. Having a physical thing to hold that is that character was really helpful in a way that surprised me. And since then I've gotten, a squirrel for Pettibone.
My dad will move Pettibone around the house once in a while and put him in weird places, so you'll be walking around and then one of my friends will say, oh my gosh, Emmett, you got a squirrel in your house. I'll say, oh no, that's my dad's squirrel. It's not actually alive. Why do you need a taxidermied squirrel?
I'd had this experience when I was a very young age. I had come up with this imaginary squirrel friend would kind of meet me just outside and would kind of walk home with me and hop over trees and fences and run along the side of the road, and we'd talk and he'd tell me about what's going on. And again, I think that's about, sometimes you just kind of let the characters run and take you with them. And it's a lot of fun that way. I don't think I could have consciously written him in the way that he writes himself.
I am Nan Peretti, and I own Elmer's store here in Ashfield, right across the street from where Greg Ruth lives. So I have quite a bit of opportunity to observe him throughout the day. It's scary. So now we're going to do something with the Lost Boy. That makes me think that children will disappear.
Oh, that's cute. Oh, thank you.
Because it was very, very realistic last time. When the pirate book came out, we did a big reading. We had Pirate Day at Elmer's. So we had Greg do readings all day long at Elmer's of the pirate book. And in fact, the kid in the first pirate book looks just like Emmett. So now both boys kind of have their own books, which apparently is an important thing in that family.
I do use my boys for my children's book stuff. A lot comes through, so it's dangerous, I guess, to be around me because you might end up with a book. I don't really want them to do anything in particular except find what they want to do and love it. Hopefully, if they're lucky enough, they'll be able to do what they love to do for work, whatever that is. I think we're just here to train these tiny humans to grow up and be good people when they grow up. And so it's not really my place to tell them what they have to be or what they should be or even impose what my hopes are.
I don't know what I'm gonna be.
I mean, Jen and I are both artists. I feel like in some ways, even if they don't become artists later in life or pursue careers or lives in the arts, they'll have grown up within it.
I do music. I play the saxophone and the piano.
The part that they see is me coming home from the studio tired or cranky or exhausted or, or tapped out. So in some ways they're seeing what it's like to live as an artist rather than to live with art. It's different.
I'm not planning on becoming like an illustrator or someone who does jewelry or any of that stuff. It just doesn't, that's my parents. It's just not really me. I don't think.
But who knows, I think Nate, my youngest, is somebody that I see in him that quality of self-escape. He goes into the sand table and he'll sit for hours kind of, creating these whirls and smashing them together and making noises. And I can tell you can watch him, he's just in another place. And I think that kind of creative meta state that you get into when you're playing pretend in that way, that's what art making is. And I recognize that. And I think it's something that Jen and I both see as very familiar. I think Emmett is brilliantly creative and inventive, but it's a different kind of invention, and it's one that we're still watching.
Emmett's great. He's very, very, very industrious, and I'm very proud of Emmett. I like them both very much.
So this is it. This is a story about kind of one house in two different time periods. The boy on the front they've seen parents who, instead of getting a job at the bank or wherever, can make their own work and kind of raise a family on their own. I think that's a good lesson. In a Hitchcockian mode, it's more about mood and setting up tension and earned frights, and that comes from invested characters, that comes from working with a narrative that builds towards something. There's a lot of astrial in this. It turns out that we kind of moved to a place where this made sense in a weird way. There's a lot of stuff hidden in the ground on this as well. I'm currently working on a graphic novel with Ethan Hawke on Geronimo and the Apache Wars. And he and I have been collaborating a lot on this project. It is so tremendously fun and so exciting and so important. It's an area of our kind of collective history in America that we have a hard time looking at. You know, you yell Geronimo when you're jumping out of a plane, but nobody really knows why we do it. And there's an actual real life story of this man and his experiences that informs this. And we really felt like we wanted to tell that story. It's there, it's really exciting, it's really rich. I have a bunch of things I want to do. One of the things with these big graphic novels is they take a lot of time. I may be only 42 or, oh my God, I'm 42, but I am actually at the stage where I start to realize, like, just practically, there's only so many more graphic novels that I can produce in the time I have left. So I kind of have been starting to really try to figure that road down.
I'm a big fan of his just because I feel like he really lives a pure life of an artist and really creates, from his heart and his soul, and you see that on the page and it comes out in his brush, and I think he's just extraordinary.
Greg and I have been talking for a while about possibly doing something together. I don't know what it's going to be. I mean, I'd love to have him do a graphic novel of mine, but he's so busy right now. So I'm dying to do some work with him.
You just feel drawn to this world, and you can't believe that someone has made it up and that there's all of this rich detail in this incredible world.
In your art, you're describing who you are and what you like when you draw what you draw, or make, like if you do pottery. Same with jewelry, like the pictures you choose and such.
That sort of sincerely broad intelligence and that the humor and the depth of his perceptions of things comes across in all of the work. He's a whip smart guy, and the work is equally smart and elegant.
Art is not necessarily the thing that will keep you from the rain, and it won't warm you when it's cold, and it won't feed you when you're hungry, but it's the thing that makes you a person. To a lot of people who aren't creatives or artists, they tend to think, well, what's its purpose? And it's just kind of this extra thing to do, and why don't you get a real job and produce something? And I think in a way it is real. I think it is essential. This is the thing that stimulates our humanity and showcases our humanity. I think as a species, we make monuments to ourselves in our buildings, but we make a monument to our humanity with our art.